Welcome, educators. Today is day 2 of Workload Tips for Educators. This is our mini-series, our free mini-series. If you're new to the Social Emotional Learning Group for educators, what we try and do is every Wednesday we provide a workload tip for educators. Every Friday we celebrate our wins because looking back at what we did accomplish helps produce some feel-good chemicals in our brain and body and helps us celebrate what is going well, since that we are we experienced so much lately, particularly due to COVID, what isn't going well, right? So it helps keep us motivated. And then I also provide a mini series every single month. And this month's topic is workload tip for educators. So thank you so much for being here. If you are here with me tonight, feel free to say hi, put a comment. I try and watch that as much as possible while I'm presenting, and I will answer any questions if I can. Let me know where you're tuning in from. If you're catching the replay, let me know that you're watching the replay as well. Anytime, you're welcome to directly message me if you don't want to put any comments in the feed. All right, so if you missed yesterday, you can watch the replay in this group. Yesterday, I had people reflect on what you do within a day, what are your tasks that you normally do, what's the minimum requirements, as well as how do you actually spend your time. So what we want to do is we just think about this and we we map it all out, and knowing whether or not we're in alignment with one another is a great place to start. Okay, because when we're out of alignment, we can actually take those tasks and we can start removing things or start thinking about what needs to be added, what needs to be taken off our plate. Thank you, Stacy, for saying hi. Again, if you're here with me, feel free to say hi so that I know that you're watching. Okay, so we had you do that yesterday, and then also we had you prioritize. So we started looking at what is of high importance and high urgency. And those are the items that would end up in this quartile, and that's what we really want to focus on at any given day or any given week. And then we want to go from there and look at the other things. Things that are low importance, low urgency, we really don't want to focus on right now. Particularly these times, the stress levels are high among educators. The learning curve is huge. And all of this shifting of whether we're going from distance learning, face-to-face, hybrid model, and just that transient piece where we're going back and forth, that's a lot on our systems and a lot for our minds to take on, to be honest with you, and the learning curve is huge. So if we can eliminate some stress just through implementing some workload tips, some strategies in place, we can save time and energy here so that we have the time and energy in the place that we need to, particularly with this new learning curve of COVID and all the demands. Plus, it adds to our stress levels. So if you take away just one workload tip that helps alleviate, frees up some time for you, frees up some energy, or alleviates stress, it is well worth it. You do not need to implement every workload tip that I share throughout this mini series either. Take one or two that resonates with you and your schedule as it is, apply that, and then come back and watch this again if you need to learn more tips and tricks. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. What of the typical teacher day, what I want you to do is, as you do this activity, I want you to minimize and strategize with those as much as possible. So for instance, I want you to think about what can you automate? If you have something in your list that I talked about, I used to write out due date this, or please return to Shiloh Webb by this date on several paperwork. As a special education teacher, I handed out a lot of checklists to teachers and needed to get them back. What I realized is I was spending a lot of time writing that out. So I took 10 to 15 minutes. I went and got address labels from the office, and then I actually had all of that pre-printed. The only thing I needed to do was fill in the date. That saved me a ton of time. That's an example of automation. The other thing, if you do a lot of learning plans, IEPs, or general emails, I want you to create a template of that so that when you actually go and do the email, you're kind of cut and pasting, and then you're putting in the pieces that are individual to that particular student or that situation. That'd be another way to automate, because if we spend that time retyping something that we are constantly saying, that is a time waster. It's a complete time waster. The other thing, when you're looking at the typical tasks that you do in a day, think about those things that you repeatedly say over and over to students, whether it's routines or certain behaviors. If you're saying the same thing over and over and you're feeling like a broken record, automate that. And what I mean by that is go visual with that expectation, that routine, however it may be, and post that into your classroom. So instead of saying it, you are just referring to it and you can continue to teach. I don't know if you've ever heard of Envoy. That was an Envoy strategy that I had learned. It definitely saves a lot of time and energy. So that's another way that you can think about automation. Now, the next part I want you to think about is think about the return on investment. So when I say that, I don't mean return on money. I want you to think about the return on energy, the return on time. So if you are assigning, or even the return on student growth, right? If you're assigning a certain, 30 problems, does the student need to do 30 problems in order to really grow in that area? Yes or no? If the answer is no, and they can probably do it in 15, then only assign 15, because then you only have 15 to correct. You can get rid of, reduce that in that way. The other thing that I want you to think about is think about why you're doing what you're doing and if the return comes back. So for instance, I was working with one teacher that was feeling really overwhelmed with her morning work. Fifth grade classroom had a lot of, actually 5 special education students in that classroom. And she asked me to come in and observe and give her some strategies on how to improve the student behavior during that morning time. Now, we all know morning is really busy. We're taking attendance, lunch count, if you're more at the elementary level, but even at the high school level, it's busy. Kids are coming in with emotional things from the night before, the morning of, right? And it's a very busy time. And so things can happen really fast. And so in this time, we actually looked at, I saw that these students were struggling. There was a paraprofessional that was really stretched thin on how to handle or help these students with their morning work and get them started, keep them motivated, and keep them completing it. But I also noticed the regular education students were struggling with it as well. And there was a lot of immaturity, I should say, emotional immaturity happening. So talking with her a little bit further, we learned that morning work wasn't necessary. It wasn't really necessary for the standards that she was trying to teach. It helped a little bit with maintenance of skills, but the main reason that she was doing morning work was she was told to do it by her mentors. It was something her grade has always done. And the other thing was it kept them busy in order so that they stayed out of mischief, right? But what they were lacking was social skills. She didn't have a sense of community in that classroom, and she was really wanting that. So we took away the morning work and we started putting in some game time. And they worked on cards. They worked on fact fluency through different card games. They worked on Uno or apples to apples. So they got to, use some of that vocabulary work as well. But what came of that was exponential growth in their social skills. And they actually had a more sense of community. On top of that, they started their day more positive, which led through the rest of the day. So she had less behavioral issues throughout the day. There was a lot of positive energy, so she felt more motivated to get her work done, felt more joyful teaching, not as stressed. As well as the students. They got a lot more work done because they started their day on a positive note, doing something that they really enjoyed, such as the game and the collaboration versus the morning work. So that's what I want you to think about return on investment. Just think about, is it really, really necessary? And am I just doing what I've always done? Okay, so the next thing I want you to do is consider planning. Brian Tracy, who is a speaker on goal setting and achieving high success, says every minute you spend on planning saves you an average of 10 minutes in execution. And I would say that is very, very true. When I think about lessons that I've delivered to students or even communicated to staff in collaborating, when I did not plan out what I had to say, I spent a lot of time on the backside clarifying, recorrecting, and communicating what I really meant. So that is true when I think about that. On a skill that I wish I would have learned early on in my teaching career is to plan out on Sundays. So take 10 to 15 minutes every Sunday and plan out your entire week. The very first thing that I want you to think about is the non-negotiables, such as bathroom breaks, lunch, snack time. If you're like me, 10 a.m., I get hangry. Type yes if you get hangry. And so what I do is I schedule in snack time to prevent that from happening, for that agitation to carry through for the remainder of the day. All right, so schedule in your non-negotiables. When we don't, what happens is we can go from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. without ever getting a bathroom break. That activates our internal stress response system. We want to eliminate that internal response system from activating as much as possible. And the best way to do that is schedule that in and get that part of our routine. This seems like a no-brainer, but how many times, as we get going in the school year, we just go into go mode and we don't really think, and before we know it, we haven't used the restroom all day long. So schedule that in. That's your non-negotiables. The next thing I want you to do is schedule time for those tasks that are high priority, high urgency. And you're going to schedule in a block of time, because shifting from activity to activity is a huge time waster. We don't want to do that. Our brain actually takes anywhere from like 10 to 12 minutes just to get fully engaged into an activity. And so if we're constantly interrupted, and I know that's part of teaching, what's going to happen is it's going to take us longer to complete a task than we had at the beginning, or than what we had even planned for, or that we have time allowed for. So limit those distractions. If you can, turn off notifications on your phone during that time. I actually encourage you to turn off all notifications on your phone altogether, because we know what happens when all of a sudden we see the preview of an email from a parent that has been stressing us out. It can actually activate our stress response system right away when we haven't even fully read the email. And I'm not necessarily always parents that stress us out, right? But those things happen. And so if you can turn off notifications altogether and limit those distractions, highly encourage. Okay, so schedule your activities, schedule in that chunk of time to get those things that are highly urgent, and you got to prioritize. Next thing I want you to think about is think critically about this time as well. So those things that are high importance, high urgency, when you're scheduling that in on your schedule, are you scheduling at a time where you work optimally? For instance, when the students leave at the end of the day, my brain gets tired. It's actually been a long day usually. So for me to schedule something that I really need to focus on and give a lot of energy to at the end of the day isn't a good use of my time. I work best at 4 or 5 a.m. and most of the time people are not awake that early. So it's a time where we have limited distractions, and we don't have to worry about it as much. And I can efficiently get the task done. Okay, so consider about when you're scheduling that. The other thing I want you to do when you schedule out your week, think of the top 3 to 5 things that you need to accomplish that week. By the end of the week, what do you need to get done, and what's going to be a big return on investment or time or energy if you get that task done. Now, research says we never want to actually choose more than 3 to 5 things. 5 is really top. So on any given day, never put more than 5 things on your to-do list either. I know some of you may be able to do, just go down the road, but the majority of people can't handle more than 5 tasks. And what we can do if we have 10 tasks and we only get 3 done in a day, each day we're going to leave feeling like completely incompetent, and it's not going to help produce those awesome, like achieving success chemicals that we need to keep us motivated and keep us energized to keep going. Okay, so I have a sheet that I actually choose my daily 3 and what I put on there, and as I get them done, I cross them off. You can see this week I only got 2 of the 3 done, but most days I aim to get all 3 done. On the back side, it has my week's priorities. So these are the 5 main things that I need to get done. My daily 3 is contributing to getting these 5 main things done. So when you're planning out your week, put that in. Work on your daily 3. Then what you want to do is you have your weekly 3. So schedule what they are. Like I said, you can go up to 5. And then you want to cross them off. Celebrate. I have you celebrate wins every single Friday. That's to keep you motivated. Celebrate those little wins every day as you get your tasks done. Okay. When you're looking at your tasks, another helpful strategy is to do like stoplight categories. So anything that you need to get done today or right away, you can put them in the red. Anything that you have time for within a day or 2 or to get done this week, you can put them in yellow. And anything that you have a lot of time for, just leave them in your green folder. And as you're going through each week and each day, you just continue to move those things forward. So if you don't have anything much that you had to do today, granted there is very little, right, that those moments happen, but they do happen, you can move something then from your green folder that was open-ended to today. The other way that you can do, this is another position that I was in, but I would organize it now, soon, and then got time. And I would just slip those in. I was in multiple buildings, so I would travel and have that. Now we have technology and it's easier to access. You can do this same file folder system on like your Google Drive. You can color code all of your files. You can color code even your tasks. So for my non-negotiables, they're all red. And that meant that any secretary, if in my administration days, the secretaries I worked with, they knew not to schedule anything in the red and that it was something that really couldn't be moved. When I worked with colleagues, the same thing. They knew that a certain color meant you can't schedule me. And I gave people access to my calendar versus doing the email back and forth. And we're going to talk tomorrow about email and that communicating in more efficient ways. Okay, so then the last thing for today, I want you to think about on your list that you had from yesterday, I want you to think about how much can you bundle? What duties can you bundle? So I'm thinking of like office jobs, running, if you have office jobs that you need to do copier, what errands can you run along the way? Rather than taking your water bottle, going to the water cooler, coming back to your classroom, walking down the copier, coming back to your classroom, then running out a couple errands. So take a bin and put all of those things that when you leave your classroom, if you go down throughout the building, you're going to drop those things off or pick things up and do that. I often would schedule copier time on Fridays. The reason why I chose Fridays after school is because the building was pretty quiet. The bell rings, people are able to leave, they scatter, they want to get going for the weekend. I did too, but the benefit of that is that when I went down into the copy room, I didn't get caught up in a lot of the conversations. I didn't have to wait to access the copier. And so, that's part of that intelligent laziness, right? I don't want to have to wait. I want to be able to do my stuff and I want to do it now. I like to socialize, so don't get me wrong, but I had to find that balance. And so Fridays after school were really effective for me to do a lot of the office stuff. And it was a way for me to get done. And then I was prepped in time for Monday and for the entire week. So I chose, for me, it worked one day a week. I would go down the copier and spend a chunk of time to get it all done versus coming back and forth. So think about how much you can bundle. The other thing, think about extra duty assignments. So sometimes we have bus duty, we have a staff, or not staff lounge duty, but we might have lunchroom duty or anything like that. I would choose bus duty, lunchroom duty, playground duty as much as possible because my job is to connect with students, as well as I did a lot of interventions and had to collect data on students. So in that time when I served my duty, I could actually take time to connect with them as well as collect data at the same time. So really think about the ways that you can work as efficiently as possible and bundle those things in so that you are not killing 2 birds with 1 stone. We're actually feeding 2 birds out of 1 hand. Okay, so that wraps up for today's mini series, less than 20 minutes, and that's what I aim for, nothing super long. Again, pick one strategy that works for you and go ahead and try and implement that. Remember, it takes about 67 consecutive times to build a new habit. So it might take a while to get this in, but trust me, if you put systems in place now that will save you time and energy, That will pay out in the long run, particularly during these times when stress levels are high. So thank you for joining me. Again, if you're joining, say hi. Let me know that you're watching the replay. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Bye now.